Correct.
All right, everybody, we're ready. Shout out to the Curls. I talked to Mick Fansler last night, Ben.
Oh, yeah? Did you tell him how much you like that song?
Yeah, I said, Like a Fool's a hit. Ben loves it.
Like a fool.
How funny. I said, boy, he just won't stop singing it in the middle of shows. And you just did it right there, right when I was about to say it. Wow.
I can't help myself.
No, yeah, shout out to the Curls, as always. Okay, your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, April 15th. Hey, live stream chat room. Who got their checks today? I got mine. I got my check. 1,200.
Woo-wee.
1,200.
Trump check.
You guys get Trump checks today?
It's a chump check.
Oh,
Ooh, that's hard to say. Chump check from Trump, because he's a chump.
Trump checks. That's what you guys get your Trump check today? Weigh in on the live stream chat. Let's talk about it. What are you going to do with that Trump money? What are you going to do with those Trump bucks? It's actually your money.
It's your
money.
What
I mean? They're just
By the
giving
way,
you back your money that you paid.
You got it. Your direct deposit, right? So you didn't see that he put his name on it.
No.
What a sleazy mother. Beep.
Thank you for cleaning that up. All right, your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, April 15th is moments away. But let's thank the following unions for sponsoring this podcast. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board. If you're listening and you're in a union, talk to your foreman or somebody and see if you can become sponsors of this show as well. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, April 15th, is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Benny J, give us a Wednesday song of the day.
Well, you know, since you talked about Don't Act Like a Fool, I thought I'd sing another song with Fool in it. Everybody plays the fool. Come on, D. The Main Ingredient from, I want to say 1973. Don't hold me to that. Main Ingredient. Do you know who the lead singer was, D?
Ice Cube. It's my guess for everything.
Cuba Gooding's father.
Oh, Cuba Gooding Sr.?
That is correct.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now.
Nice, Cube.
It is Wednesday, April 15th. And live from Ben's house, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's the return of political scientist and activist Loreen Targos. And now your host, not a scientist. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. Every time the train comes by when we start, you ever notice that? Where was I? Oh, yes. Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Barack Brings the Peace Wednesday. And here's why. Before we get started, good news, everybody. Good news, D. My Sun Times arrived.
Yay!
Yeah, you remember? You know what? Let me just go back just in case some of you forgot. I know many of you were probably concerned because yesterday's paper was a no-show. So let me set the scene. It was like 4:30 this morning. I was up. I don't know why, but I was up reading a great spy novel, The Innocent. Anyway, doesn't matter what I was reading. When all of a sudden, whoop, I heard the sounds of the papers slamming against the front door. And I rushed to the front door and I opened it up and there they were, all three of them, Tribune, New York Times, Sun Times. Yay! I want to give a shout out to the delivery man. Apparently that's an essential service. God bless you. Risking life and limb to deliver newspapers. Tip your delivery man, everybody. Don't be cheap.
Have you ever delivered papers before? You ever done that? Paper route?
No, never had a paper route. Ever.
My now sister-in-law, I filled in for paper route one time. Oh, my God. A lot of people didn't get their paper that day.
Yes,
it was really hard.
Yeah. No,
holy crap.
I have a lot of respect for the paper delivery people. Anyway, so, yeah, they were there. I don't know what happened to yesterday's paper. It didn't arrive. Whatever. Who cares? I got today's paper, and I was so happy I hugged it, D. Look.
You're a nerd.
I love you.
Who knows where that paper's been?
Well, yeah, it's true. I always wash my hands after I touch the newspaper. Anyway, you know what? It's crazy times. I'm getting so weepy-eyed over the bright one coming here. Just goes to show I'm kind of losing my mind. Been stuck in this attic for a while, D. Getting a little batty up here in the attic. Get it? Bats in the attic. So, anyway, having the Sun Times gave me a chance to play one of my favorite games, Headline Battle.
Where is that radio? My Battle of the Headlines.
Oh, yeah, Battle of the Headlines. Tribune versus Sun Times. This is a battle we do all the time. Unfortunately, here's my Tribune that was delivered. So the headline story in the Sun Times, I'm almost happy to see this story. We're going to be talking about this story in the local news with the doctor, and then Loreen Targos will be coming on. We'll talk about this.
I'm looking at the paper right now. I see a pun. I see a pun.
Hilco Gate. The city of Chicago and its infinite wisdom, and there's a lot of people outside of Chicago that are learning about the city by listening to this show. So I'm going to get into this much more when Dennis does the local news and when Loreen is. But sometimes the city of Chicago does these baffling things, people, like in this particular case, issuing a demolition permit in the middle of a pandemic. And when they demolished this coal plant, smokestack, they released all sorts of dust into the air and particles into the air. And Lord knows how many people have been contaminated in the middle of a pandemic. Why they thought that would be a good idea. Anyway, this is a story that's been brewing for a while. Fingers are being pointed here and there. And the Sun Times headline, it's aldermen are fighting with the mayor. The Sun Times headline is, "Where there's smoke, there's ire." Come on, D. Come on. And the Tribune.
Chicago Pun Times. At it again.
Tribune headline. Actually, there is no headline. Somehow or other, the Tribune did not cover that story. So it's Sun Times by a TKO.
Yeah.
Tribune's like, they're still in the corner of the ring. I'm not coming out. No, they're not even going to fight. Come on, Tribune. It's an important story. Anyway, the Tribune didn't cover it. So give it to the Sun Times. I was really happy to see the Sun Times return to my door. The big news, as far as I'm concerned, in political world, was in the New York Times, and talked about the invisible hand of Barack Obama nudge primary to accelerate the end game. And this was one of those classic New York Times stories. Actually, it's not just the New York Times that plays this journalistic game. It's the Sun-Times plays it, the Tribune plays it, all newspapers play it. This is like 101 of journalism. I'm going to give you guys a little insight about this business I've dedicated my life to. This is a classic case of a story that's filled with information provided by unnamed sources. So there's some unnamed sources feeding Glenn Thrush, the writer of the story, and the unnamed sources are generally coming from the Barack Obama campaign. Lord knows who they could possibly be. Could it be Barack Obama himself? Who knows who's feeding this? I doubt it. It's probably someone who can claim they really know. Like some top 8. Okay, Glenn, I was just talking to Barack. Where they don't even call him President Obama. You know what I mean? They know him so well they call him Barack, that kind of thing. Now you ask, good question coming up here. You ask, why the unnamed source? Since there's nothing in this article that's remotely critical about anyone. Okay, you know what I mean? So why are they hiding?
Really wimpy.
It's just like, you see this a lot. I mean, well, it's in the Sun-Times story about the mayor. Unnamed sources are constantly feeding information to reporters, and then reporters withhold their names. Why is that? Why are they withholding names? Well, there's probably 2 reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. Number one, the source, the unnamed source, is making the reporter feel real important by talking to him or her. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember where Bernie Madoff, the real sleazy financier, the way he would lure people into his scam, he would say, I am not showing anybody else this deal. Only you.
This guy sounds so sleazy.
In fact, I don't even know if I can allow you to. I have to think about whether I'm going to let you have this inside information, this access to this investment. And the person with the money would go, please, Bernie, please. Not Bernie Sanders, Bernie Madoff. Please, Mr. Madoff, please, Mr. Madoff. I won't get anybody confused here. Please, Mr. Madoff, please let me give you all my money. Oh, okay, I will. And then they got scammed. That's a sucker's game. So it's kind of a similar thing with sources. Okay, don't tell anyone I told you this. You're the only one I'm going to tell this to. And I'm only going to tell this to you because I really respect you and like you because you're an outstanding reporter. You do a great job, by the way. Excellent story you wrote last week. But Barack says, okay, don't tell. You promise not to. I swear to God, I'm not going to tell anybody. The reporter's so excited. He's got a scoop. It's coming straight from Barack. As soon as he's done getting whatever gobbledygook the inside source gives him, he runs to his editor. Boss, did I get the scoop for you? All right? That's how journalism works, folks. They're not going to teach you that in graduate school. No. It's like all the president's men in graduate school. These knights fighting the good fight. Anyway, that's how journalism really works. They feed you. You're kind of like a sucker being drawn in by Bernie Madoff. There's another reason they may not tell you their name because they don't want to use it because they've probably been telling some other reporter the same thing like an hour before they told you. You know what I'm saying, D? That's an old game in journalism where they call you up. Ben, I'm going to give you an exclusive. Only you are going to get this story because only you can handle it. Only you have the expertise and the wisdom to handle something so difficult as the story I'm about to give you, at which point I'm thinking, let's see. I assume that the Tribune already turned you down on the story. The Sun-Times said no. Block Club said, call that weird guy at the Reader. Anyway, that's how it works in journalism. But you can be sure by the time these unnamed source from the Obama campaign got to the reporter from the Tribune, from the New York Times, they'd already been in the Washington Post. It's probably NPR. Oh, God, can you imagine that conversation with the NPR?
Oh, here we go.
Oh, it's fascinating. Anyway, so that's the game they play.
Old NPR.
They pretend like you're the smartest person in the world, and they just feed you some gobbledygook, and you gobble it all down, and you throw it out there like it's really important news. In this case, the inside source was gently steering the New York Times to the notion that Barack Obama was the peacemaker who brokered the peace between Biden and Bernie. Yeah, it was Barack Obama with his gentle nudging, with his peacemaking capability. Remember, he won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh my gosh.
With his brilliant.
Oh my gosh, you're right. He won the Peace Prize.
His diplomatic efforts, just navigating the whole situation, working it like the genius that Barack Obama is. And this New York Times guy's like, oh man, this is good stuff. That's actually the sound of a typewriter. They don't really have typewriters anymore. So, I don't know. It's I can just try to imagine. There was apparently a series of phone calls between Barack Obama and Bernie. They had several conversations. They didn't meet face to face. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And I just kind of have this vision of Barack Obama, just calling Bernie would excite Bernie. Because, let's be honest. Within the Democratic Party, Barack Obama's kind of like the cool guy. D, it's like, we can all say, I oppose Barack Obama and he was too wimpy. But if he were to call, it'd be like another whole other thing. I'd be like, D, guess what? Barack Obama called me. He talked to me. Oh, Ben, really love your TIFF stories. That's my Barack Obama imitation.
You're getting there.
Yeah, could you imagine? He would start off by telling me how much he loved my TIFF story. That's what they all do when they first call me. They tell me how much I love my TIFF story.
Love your TIFF stories. I need you to take it easy on my boy Rom.
Yes, right. Take it easy on Rom.
Remember, he's smart. You're not.
Yeah, that's true. They all love my TIFF stories, but they never did anything about the TIFF program. You ever notice that? Oh, great stories. We're not going to do anything about the scam, but keep writing those stories, man. Anyway, we always say, oh, yeah, Barack Obama calls Bernie. It probably didn't take much. It probably what do you think he did? He invited him to play basketball game with him. Bernie's a basketball player. You know that, D.
Oh, yeah. He could shoot free throws like a maniac.
He's got kind of like this two-handed set shot that's like from the 50s. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Well, it's not the granny shot, is it?
What's the granny shot?
The granny shot's where you go under your legs.
Oh, I love the Rick Barry shot. That's before your time. Rick Barry was one of the greatest free throw shooters of the 60s and 70s, and he shot a two-handed underhand shot. A little basketball knowledge for you, D, huh?
Millennials, we're going to reference things that you like too. Don't worry.
Wilt Chamberlain, he tried it for a while. In fact, Rick Barry always used to say Shaquille O'Neal would have scored a lot more points had he done the granny shot. Well, he didn't call it the granny shot. Anyway, the underhanded shot. But anyway, so probably didn't take much. Bernie was so excited, he probably ran to his wife, goes, Jane, you won't believe this. Barack Obama just called me and invited me to play in the basketball game. I'm going to be a little tougher, though, Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Let me just put this out here. I've already discussed it. I just wrote a reader story in this. I'm a Bernie-crat. I voted for Bernie. I'm going to withhold my support for a little while for Joe Biden to see what I can get for it, huh? Just because Bernie went for him doesn't mean you can get a... I want something. Hey, I don't know. What should I get, D? How about a new TV? Hey, Biden, well, bring that TV in. Oh, that's probably illegal. Don't really want a new TV. But anyway, so what do I want from Barack Obama in exchange, from Joe Biden? I have to think about that. Maybe, I don't know, health care for all, Medicare, a pledge to support Medicare for all. That would probably seal the deal. Just, I know it'd be reversing everything you stood for the last 6 months, but nobody cares. Nobody's going to pay attention to what you said in last summer's debate. I mean, Trump may make a commercial out of it, but who cares about that? Why? Democrats should stop worrying about commercials from Trump. So anyway, in the article, Barack Obama, in the New York Times article, Barack Obama was sort of ruminating about what he might have done differently during his campaign, during his presidency, that would have protected the country from Trump. In other words, there were things that Barack Obama did between 2008 and 2016 that I know even if you love Barack Obama, you have to concede this, that led or helped lead to Trump's victory. When I read this in the story about him ruminating, it kind of brought back a memory of another basketball-related theme. D, just bear with me here. This goes way back in time to the early O's. The Bulls had a very sardonic coach named Scott Skiles, and they had a very...
I remember Scott Skiles.
Yeah, he was a wise guy. And they had a center named Eddie Curry who would get kind of lethargic, to put it mildly, in the middle of games, wouldn't really hustle a lot.
I just remember being a kid getting basketball cards, and each pack was full of Scott Skiles type players.
Yeah.
Never got like the good ones, just like Scott Skiles and Tom Gugliotta.
Yeah, that's how it works with basketball or baseball cards. There's tons of Scott Skiles cards.
Damn, who is Grant Long?
I like Grant Long. And maybe one Michael Jordan card. Anyway, so Scott Skiles, very sardonic coach, was asked, what could this sort of lethargic, almost lazy center Eddie Curry do to get more rebounds? And Skiles replied, jump, which I always thought was kind of funny, just jump. So, Obama, what could you have done to avoided the disaster, the debacle of the Trump presidency? I don't know. How about anything? Like resist. It goes back to what the whole notion that Barack Obama dedicated his career to, which was articulated by Michelle Obama: when they go low, I go high. So this notion that there's nothing but bipartisanship, this notion that Republicans and Democrats get along. And I'm thinking about this in the context of Wisconsin. So reading Barack Obama's, this article about Barack Obama reaching out to Bernie Sanders and reading about Barack Obama ruminating and thinking about what he might have done differently. I'm thinking about Wisconsin. The Democrats are finally emerging slowly, not completely, taking baby steps toward emerging from the devastation of what went down in Wisconsin, which started in 2010 in the middle of Barack Obama's first term. And in the 2010 midterm election, Scott Walker took control of the governor's mansion in Wisconsin. The Republicans took control of the House and the Senate. It was a devastating loss. I've always convinced that those 2010 midterms resulted in part because Barack Obama just dropped the ball, and Barack Obama's followers dropped the ball on just generating the enthusiasm of their base. They sort of went to sleep a little bit at the wheel. And the midterm elections, I know there's usually the party in charge of the party that holds the White House does poorly in midterm elections, but they really did poorly in 2010. There was no real reason for it. Other than they took their eye off the ball and fell into believing all that BS about how it's just no Republican, no red states, no blue states, just the United States. Anyway, what did Walker do? One, boom. He, with the Republican control of the House and the Senate, they gerrymandered all the legislative districts so that it would be even harder to remove them. So now you have voters in Wisconsin voting for a majority of Democrats, but the Republicans hold the House and the Senate because they've gerrymandered those districts. And two, perhaps the most important move that Walker and the Republicans made, they gutted the unions. We talk about this with Ed Maher all the time. They pretty much cut off at the knees all the public works employees unions in the state of Wisconsin, and those are unions that support Democrats. If you destroy the unions, you're really ruining the Democratic Party. You're hurting the Democratic Party. You're injuring it. And what did Obama do in the face of that? Nothing. He pretended like, well, there's a fight. On one hand, this, on the other hand, that. I don't recall him going to Wisconsin and joining the resistance. I know a lot of friends of mine, and D, you know them too. They in Chicago, a lot of good lefties, a lot of Bernie-crats went up to Wisconsin. Remember, they were pounding the drum in the middle of the Capitol and calling on union activists from around the country to lead the charge to defend union rights in Wisconsin. I don't remember where the mainstream Democrats were. That's in the middle when they were still drinking that Kool-Aid, that bizarre Kool-Aid. They were even drinking it here in Illinois. Like, well, the Republicans have a point. I mean, we have to watch those pension costs. They're going kind of high. And, the unions have had it pretty good. Maybe we should loosen things up, a little bit with the unions. And I don't know, unions, you're going to have to take one for the team here. And so what happened? Walker and the Republicans cut off the unions in Wisconsin at the knees. Without the unions, the Democrats were weaker. Yes, Barack Obama was able to win in 2012, but that was like a personality win for Barack Obama. It wasn't a win for progressive values. It wasn't a win for the Democratic Party. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton got cut off at the knees. And Barack Obama's lack of resistance in 2010 helped lead to Donald Trump's victory in 2016. So if you're ruminating about what you did and didn't do, Barack Obama, I'm giving you some thoughts on that one. Of course, having said all that, if the phone were to call right now, if the phone were to ring right now, yep, and it's Barack Obama. Oh, Mr. President, yes, can I play basketball with you? He's Barack the Peacemaker, everybody. We got a great show today. Loreen Targos will be here. She'll be she's a Bernie supporter. We talk. What will Loreen Targos want?
LT?
LT. I mean, what does she want to hear from Biden to get her to vote for him? As I said it yesterday. There's three kinds of Bernie-crats, and there's the one that will just hold his or her nose and vote for Biden anyway, no matter where he lives. There's the other who will hold his nose and vote for Biden, but only if he lives or she lives in a swing state where vote really matters. And then there's the third category of Bernie-crat who won't vote for Biden no matter what, no matter where he or she lives. So ask Loreen that. Also talk to her about what's going on with Hillco Gate. the city of Chicago thought it would be a good idea to allow this developer to knock down this coal plant smokestack in the middle of a pandemic. One of the dumbest ideas I've heard from the city of Chicago in a long, long time. So plenty of political talk ahead of us. Dr. D, looking for something there. You okay?
Yeah, we're good. I had to plug my computer in. It was about to die.
Yeah, you got to do that. Anyway, we will now bring. You caught me off guard there. You were like,
yeah, I know.
You looking for a quarter or something? We're going a little batty up here in the attic. Anyway, the young man from Alton, the man they call the doctor, with the news.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? Oh, wow, a quarter.
It's probably contaminated. Don't touch it.
Oh, you're right. All right. Oh, and by the way, what'll it take for me to vote for Joe Biden? I don't know. The bar's low for me. How about legible sentences?
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words.
Bar's low.
Bar is low. No, you don't
We can
want to
start there.
You're not holding out for a TV? New TV?
No.
You can use TV.
No, I got my Trump bucks. By the way, we're asking the live stream chat. Did you get your Trump money? I got mine today. Very interesting. I'm gonna save it. All right, let's get right into what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. First up, Illinois Governor Jb Pritzker.
I'm not a perfect person.
And that's okay, buddy. No one's perfect, especially in politics. Our president is a fine example of this. That was our president. He runs the country. This guy.
That was the windmill guy, right?
Now, if you've been following the local news, you're already aware that Governor Pritzker has had his fair share of the Donald in the last month. He and other governors, well, who give a damn, have been going back and forth with President Trump trying to get more supplies and more help federally. A while back, Pritzker told Trump to do his damn job. Remember that?
Yep.
Trump then took a few jabs back at him during a couple of his god-awful daily press briefings. For those wondering what the presidential protocol is during a countrywide pandemic, well, we're seeing it on television every day. Don't be the adult in the room. Trash talk and belittle elected officials who are trying to look out for their citizens on Twitter and television. Don't hold back, by the way, on that. And finally, own up to nothing.
That's the recipe, D.
Take notes, young aspiring politician. And the weird part about it is, as awful as all of that sounded, and as hard up as a lot of us are at the moment, somehow this little fight between our governor and our president is very entertaining. And the plot thickens. Our billionaire governor finally said, "To hell with you, Donnie. Illinois is going to figure this out on our own." The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times. Oh, and hey, Chicago Magazine, you left her off the list of 50 most powerful women in Chicago. Tina Sfondeles.
Yeah, they only had Fran on there. They should have had Tina on there.
Ah,
I have a whole list of people they left off. We did it yesterday, D.
what the hell are you thinking, Chicago
Come on,
Magazine?
Chicago Magazine.
Kick off that Ricketts lady and put Sfondeles on there. Am I right?
D. Hold on, D. All right, they take care of that list, all right? Come on, Chicago Magazine. Get in the game.
If you missed yesterday's show, go check it out. A lot of that bit happened yesterday. One more time, Ben.
Here, hold on.
Don't rip up anything important now.
Hold on, this could be this is no, it's the deed to my house. All right, there we go, all right?
We're getting crazy.
Oh, my God, that's
Batty
my Trump
on the
check. No, just kidding. My Trump check. I just ripped it up for that gag.
All right, the following comes from Tina Sfondeles. Ben, go get some tape. We'll tape that up after the show. Moments after President Donald Trump backed down from a claim that he had, quote, the ultimate authority over states to reopen the country. Governor Jb Pritzker on Tuesday said that he's glad the commander-in-chief has recognized the U.S. Constitution while also calling Trump, quote, nearly irrelevant when it comes to coronavirus testing. Pritzker's televised comments on CNN's Aaron Burnett out front. Ben, you love that show. Aaron Burnett out front, right?
D, I'm not quite sure I've ever seen it. I have a confession to make. I don't have cable. I'm really at a loss.
Well, these comments came after Trump.
Have you ever seen it?
No.
Okay. Do you have cable?
Who's Aaron Burnett?
Uh-oh.
I have YouTube. All right. These comments came after a Trump news conference in which the president said he will, quote, authorize governors to reopen their states. Trump said he will be authorizing each individual governor of each individual state to implement a reopening of their state in a time and a manner as most appropriate. We have the audio here. Shout out to CNN for this audio. Please, for the love of God, don't sue us. We're just doing this show in an attic. It's the last thing we need, all right? CNN suing us. So let's hear it here. Here's Jb Pritzker on CNN.
The president also said a few moments ago in that briefing, Governor, and I know you've got a lot going on, so I don't know how much of every word of it you heard, but he said when the testing question came up that the governors are supposed to do the testing. It's not up to the federal government. So basically, any issues, any problems are your fault. Your response?
Well, that wasn't his tune earlier. In fact, let me go all the way back to when he said it was a hoax, and all of us were trying to deal with it as individual governors. Illinois was the second state in the United States, I think the same day actually as California, to put our stay-at-home order in place. It's having the effect of leveling out the cases here, but we're the ones who had to spin up testing. I asked over and over again for testing from the federal government. They kept saying they were going to deliver millions of tests across the country. They haven't done that. We've done that ourselves. We have some of the best medical institutions in the entire country. They've done that work in our state labs too. So we're producing thousands of tests. We're producing our own VTM to make sure that we've got all the supplies that we need. We've gotten very little help from the federal government. It's fine. I've given up on any promises that have been made. I hope something will get delivered from the federal government, but I don't expect it anymore.
I've given up on any promises that were made. Listen, yeah, I think that's probably the best policy that any governor can have. And at this stage, I don't know how anybody who isn't insanely dedicated to the MAGA hat could vote for Donald Trump. I understand a lot of my Bernie friends are really, tormented over whether they're going to vote for Joe Biden because Joe Biden just philosophically is like the diametric opposite of where my lefty friends would like the party and the country to go. So I truly understand, feeling like your principles at stake. But I don't know how any sane person could vote for Donald Trump. That performance on Monday, I don't think we've really talked about the performance. I'm losing track of time. Today is Wednesday. Monday, up here in the attic, I'm losing track of time. Monday's performance, Steve, where he brought out the video, and it was just like a stage campaign appearance.
Yeah.
Was so bizarre. And it just, the pretense, the notion that he was the president, he was going to be presidential. We talked about this early on. He gave that first speech. Remember the first speech? I can't remember. Again, I've lost. I think we were still back at the studio when he gave the first COVID-19 speech. And it was from the Oval Office, and he was trying to look all presidential and everything. And he came across like a zombie when he was reading he was actually reading the text. It was very bizarre. It was like he was medicated or something. And then they showed the before and the after where he would drop the F-bomb.
Yeah, somewhere between then and now, Trump just said, screw this, I'm winging it.
I'm going to try to rally my base, like every day it's a different thing. He's mad at the doctor, Fauci,
Yeah, the script's got some important stuff on it, numbers. Yeah, whatever. I'm winging it. No more scripts.
Yeah. So then I think it was Monday. He was when he says, I'm the king. By the way, good editorial in the Sun-Times. King Trump. Good editorial. I'm the king. I'll decide when we go back, when the economy gets going again. And then all of a sudden, suddenly every law professor in the country is like opining, no, the Constitution doesn't work that way. And then Trump the next day, I didn't did I say that? I didn't mean that. I mean, he's a lunatic. So, all the people that work for him have to suck up to him and kiss his butt, make sure he doesn't get mad at them, say all the right things to him. And the people who are on the outside, like the Pritzkers of the world, are trying to figure out, if I say something nice today, will it just come back to haunt me tomorrow? And so finally, it's like, forget the game. I'm just going to just wing it, go out on my own. And so I'm saying, I don't know. This is what I've been saying all along, D. I believe Trump will lose. As flawed a candidate as Joe Biden is, and on top of everything else, got the sexual assault thing going, as flawed a candidate as he is, as incapable he is of finishing a sentence, I believe he will defeat Donald Trump, and I say this because I cannot believe that my fellow Americans, and I'm not talking about the MAGA hat wearers, like the columnists for the Tribune or the editorial writers for the Tribune. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about sane, rational people. I do not believe they could vote to continue this madness like we've been seeing in the White House in the middle of a pandemic. Trump, these mood swings, these policy swings. Like you said, his obsession with promoting himself and defending himself. You know what? Maybe I'm too optimistic, D. I know you kind of been putting money, I think, quietly I think he took that Trump check and put it down in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, that's where I went. That's what I did.
I know you've been talking that you think that Trump could beat Biden. A lot of my lefty friends, they always say, it's just going to be like 2016 all over again, because that was what happened last time, so just assume it's going to happen again. But
well, there's some familiar patterns happening, like the Bernie situation. And,
Bernie's like loving Biden. By the way, I just before we went on the air, I got this this email from David Sirota. David Sirota is the former strategist and policy maker, and I don't know, was press aide to Bernie Sanders, and now he has his own blog that he's writing since he left the campaign. And I didn't have a chance to really take the deep dive in it because I got it just before we went on the air. But he goes into what I could tell, like behind the scenes stuff that was happening in the Bernie, the different factions in the Bernie Sanders campaign. Those who were saying go harder, go be tougher on Biden. I think that Bernie Sanders really wants to defeat Donald Trump. It's pretty obvious. I was joking that he just threw all in because he got a call from Barack Obama. Okay, maybe that was part of it, but I think that
Bernie, I need you to get the hell out of the race.
No, I need you to play power forward on my pickup basketball team. You got that great two-handed set. Anyway, so I think that's different in itself. But even if it's not, even if there's still this lingering animosity between Bernie Kratz and the Dems, and that'll probably be around for a long time, I think Biden will be victorious.
All right, we got more from Pritzker on CNN. And no, Jim on the live stream chat, he didn't have the sign language guy with him.
So you're saying you've given up on them on this. He also said there as he ended his press conference that there'll be severe consequences for governors if they don't get this right, basically referring to the reopening. Do you see any teeth in that threat?
Well, the severe consequence is the health and safety of the people of my state. That's the severe consequence. I mean, the president at this point is near irrelevant when it comes to this question of testing anyway, and they've done very little for us as a state. So we're doing the work. Look, we're also spinning up contact tracing. The state of Massachusetts did a great job putting a collaborative together. We're actually looking at copying that and doing that in the state of Illinois for contact tracing. And then we've ordered millions and millions of dollars worth of PPE and items of PPE that we're getting delivered from all over the world. We've had to compete with everybody, including with Donald Trump, for that PPE. But, we're getting it. We're doing what we need to do despite him.
Despite him. Yeah, it's the exact opposite of Obama. Remember in 2012, Obama going to New Jersey, meeting with Chris Christie, and again, promoting the notion that the leaders of both parties are working together to deal with the crisis on the East, which, by the way, was compared to this, minor, or relatively minor. I guess I think differently from my house were destroyed by the hurricane. What a different time, huh, D? We're just going to, the president is pretty much irrelevant in this matter, and it's absolutely the case. One day to the next, he just says something different.
All right, moving on here. And Pritzker don't play. It was released today in the Sun-Times that Governor Jb Pritzker is planning to obtain millions, or as our president calls it, millions. He says that so many times, especially during these press briefings. Millions of masks and gloves from China and bring those supplies back to Illinois on charter jets. But he's keeping the details secret out of fear. Fear that the Trump administration might seize the cargo for the federal stockpile. Boy, I hope Trump doesn't read the Sun-Times. They just gave it away.
I'm sure he gets a home subscription just like me, D. And he was very happy that his arrived this morning.
Home delivered as always. Oh, what's this?
My beloved bright one. Great column on the Bulls. That is so bizarre. Just think about that. He's hoping that Trump, he could sneak it in. Like needed supplies. Everybody's cutting their own deals wherever they can. Don't tell Trump that I'm getting these supplies, because he may take the supplies from us and what? Stockpile them in the White House? Insane times, ladies and gentlemen.
Make this for subscribers only. We got to keep this as secret as possible.
Do you think they'll allow people who get the Sun Times only on their phones and their computers to have access to that information? Or is that only for the home subscribers who get the newspaper delivered to their door, as did I?
Today, Jb Pritzker will be giving his daily COVID-19 press conference at 2:30. Not sure when you're listening to this at the moment, but go watch it if you want to know exactly what the hell is going on. Okay, moving on. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Today, Mayor Lightfoot fired up her computer and turned on her Zoom app and attended the virtual city council meeting. Ben, you're starting to come around on Zoom, aren't you?
No. Zoom sucks. I hate to say it. I know everybody out there loves it. You know, this is a whole tangent here, but you know, people fall in love with this, like these gadgets. They really just fall in with the marketing plan. Everybody remember Gmail? Oh, everybody loved their Gmail. But I love Gmail. You're on Gmail. And now it's Zoom. But even Dr. Howard Ehrman, who loves, I think he had a tattoo of Zoom. He loved it so much.
Stop.
I think even Dr. Howard Ehrman is saying, you know, this Zoom thing, Zoom is terrible. I don't know. Whenever we do a Zoom interview, it's horrible. The phone works better than Zoom.
I think I do it through my phone, and I think maybe if you do it through a computer, it'll sound better. Tough times, guys, all right?
It's tough times. I don't know. Haven't we tried it through a computer?
Oh, that's Dr. Howard Ehrman on the brow line. Look at my Zoom tattoo.
Dr. Howard Ehrman loves Zoom, ladies and gentlemen.
Zoom tattoo.
No, Zoom. He got a Zoom tattoo. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Zoom. It sounds horrible half the time, and it's just so stressful. We're up here in the attic and can barely hear what a guy's saying. And just get the regular phone. That works just fine. Or I hate to say it, give Zuckerberg credit, but Facebook Messenger. But
I was at that point like, should we be trashing Zoom so much? Let's just lean into it.
You know, America, I'm just going to point this out to you guys. Fall in love with these slogans, with these brand names. You just love them, and you don't even question it.
Oh, by the way, you need to Venmo me $30.
There we go, Venmo. That's the other. You know, you fall in love with these things, and then they just become part of your vocabulary, and then you get hostile to people who don't share them. I'm just saying that as a guy, an outsider, just an observation. America, you love Zoom, you love Gmail, you love Venmo, Slack. Oh, they love Slack.
Oh, don't get Ben started on Slack. Oh, wow. Today, Mayor Lightfoot attended the virtual city council meeting. I'm refreshing the Sun-Times for updates on that meeting, and I'll be giving those updates if they become available. We'll talk about it. Maybe tomorrow. Who knows? But we're going to talk about it regardless, all right? It's Wednesday. We got 2 more shows to go, all right?
Well, by the way, I should just tell you we got a text message from Dave Glowatz, our Ace City Council reporter. Comes on the show after every council meeting. Some funny bit. He's got a good sense of the bizarre and the absurd, and the city council is... you can generally expect them to provide that. And it's, you know what, D, I really look forward to it in the middle of the pandemic. It's like, oh, yeah, my beloved city council. But he said that that not much went down in this meeting, but the next meeting, that'll be the
next one.
Next one.
Not this one, but the next one.
I think he said they schedule one for next week. So we'll have Dave Glowatz coming back with his city council report. Always look for, he always got those bits and more Raylos in them. Alderman Raymond Lopez is usually featured in them. So looking forward to that next update from Dave Glowatz.
Yeah. So until then, Ben Joravsky, let's talk about that giant smokestack that was demolished and came crashing down during a pandemic in Chicago. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times. And Fran the Woe Man Spielman. On Saturday, Hilco Redevelopment Partners demolished a 95-year-old smokestack. Ben, you're damn near as old as that smokestack.
Yeah, man. I remember when that smokestack was built, D. I was walking down the street. I was 10 years old.
On Saturday, Hilco Redevelopment Partners demolished a 95-year-old smokestack at the site of a shuttered coal-fired power plant without abiding by the safety measures that it had promised to implement. That caused a giant plume of dust to rain down on the area, potentially creating a public health hazard in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. Homes, vehicles, streets, and sidewalks were left filthy. Armed with a city demolition permit that local alderman Mike Rodriguez, Ben, of what ward?
Mike Rodriguez, 22nd.
That's correct.
D? Come on. Who was the alderman before him?
I don't know.
Ice Cube.
Oh, that was going to be my guess. Out of all the times I didn't guess Ice Cube, the answer was Ice Cube.
He was great next Friday. Yeah, no, of course it was Rick Munoz. You knew that.
Sure. Armed with the city demolition permit that local alderman Mike Rodriguez of the 22nd Ward said he was powerless to block, the subcontractor Hilco Redevelopment Partners demolished the 95-year-old smokestack at that site. On Tuesday, Rodriguez said he would have delayed the smokestack demolition if he could have, and twice tried to do just that, only to be told by the city that the project would proceed. He now plans to introduce an ordinance requiring so-called special use permits from the Zoning Board of Appeals before future large-scale demolitions. He now plans to introduce that ordinance. Let's see here. So Fran Spielman writes here, Ben, and Ben, tell us what you think. Fran the Woe Man writes, hours after taking office, Mayor Lori Lightfoot signed an executive order stripping aldermen of their unbridled control over licensing and permitting in their wards. On Saturday, the mayor's decision to start delivering on the central promise of her corruption-fighting mayoral campaign came back to haunt the residents of Little Village, according to several aldermen. Ben, you take it from there.
Well, we're going to be talking about this with Loreen Targos in a little while, but the phrase corruption-fighting mayoral campaign, this gets back to the issue of alderman and prerogative. You know, in the middle of a pandemic, I welcome this discussion. In the middle of talking about the insane president of the United States, who is supposed to be giving reassuring briefings, but instead turns them into what? Infomercials. So in the middle of that, it's reassuring to talk about automatic prerogative once again. I remember we had this discussion many, many times, and there were a few misguided lefty listeners out there who kept insisting that automatic prerogative was a real issue. I kept trying to tell them it's not a real issue, but you know.
Yeah, let's upset those listeners again. Let's go ahead.
My beloved lefties, when they get a hold of something, they just want to hold it for the rest of their life. I know, automatic prerogative is horrible. It's a completely fabricated, made-up issue, ladies and gentlemen, that Lori Lightfoot turned into this great crusade in order to make herself look good by making aldermen look petty and corrupt. And yes, there are some petty and corrupt aldermen in the city council down through the years. Many of them have gone to prison on various corruption charges. But the notion that we are better off as a city by turning over control over all local decisions to unnamed bureaucrats is absurd. It's anti-democratic, makes no sense. And in particular, the notion that aldermen already had all the power was completely fabricated. Absolutely. There is no alderman in the city of Chicago during the reigns of Rahm and during the reigns of Mayor Daley, Baby Daley, Richard M. Daley, before Rahm, who ever had more say over any program or development or project in his or her ward. This is a completely made-up issue that Lori Lightfoot had used to her benefit. And part of the reason why lefties cling to it so much is because aldermanic prerogative was used as an excuse to kill some subsidized housing programs on the far northwest side of Chicago, where the alderman Napolitano said he was able to kill the projects by saying, I have aldermanic prerogative, when in reality he was able to kill the projects because Mayor Rahm Emanuel let him do that. But aldermen throughout the city, now have lost control, apparently, over things like weather. The coal stack, the coal plant can be demolished, and in the middle of a pandemic. Now, putting aside the notion of aldermanic prerogative, putting aside the notion of whether Alderman Mike Rodriguez or some unnamed bureaucrat in the Lori Lightfoot administration should have the say over such a permit, I think an investigation should be done as to who thought it was a good idea to begin this demolition project in the middle of the pandemic. That, to me, is like an absurd decision in and of itself. So I would love to see an investigation done. It kind of reminds me, I mean, it's a far, it's environmentally far more destructive, but it's kind of reminds me of the Trump sign, which is a huge irritant to anybody with a brain in the city of Chicago. That big Trump sign on the Trump building right on the Chicago River, somehow or other that got there. And there was nothing we could do about that permit. Remember that? There was no fight over that. There was no resistance to that. It was suddenly there. And then I remember Mayor Rahm going, nothing I can do about it. It just happened. It's always funny, like these decisions are made, and somehow or other, the mayor's powerless, or they think it's a good idea. So I would really love to do go back in time and take a point-by-point look at who thought it was a good idea to do this demolition project in the middle of a pandemic. Now they're saying, well, all the safety measures that they promised to take, they didn't take, and that's what. But even with the safety measures, who thought this would be a good idea, D? So, what? This thing's been sitting there for 95 years, as Dennis said. It's got some dust in there. Maybe not a good idea to demolish it in the middle of the pandemic. So this story is just beginning, and curious where it's going to take us, D.
All right, so we're going to be talking more about this with Loreen Targos. This has just got Chicago political news junkie written all over it, this story. So Ben and Loreen are going to be taking the deep dive on this a little later on. Make sure you tune in. Well, I say a little later on, but I mean, it's going to be about 8 minutes from now, so just hang tight with us here. Before we wrap up and get to Loreen, let's go to you, the live stream chat. That is right. What is happening, everybody, on the live stream chat? We're asking everybody if they got their Trump checks. Brianna weighed in. She got hers. Ben, she spent it already.
Okay, it didn't last long.
Hey, I'm sure people got bills to pay. Yeah. It's funny. I was waiting out on both my internet and my phone bill. Like, hey, ball's in your court, Sprint and Comcast. What you gonna do? As soon as the Trump checks came, Comcast, Sprint, hey, give us your money. Shut me down. So I got Sprint back up. When I get home, I'm going to get Comcast going back up. That's how it goes, everybody. All right. Let's see here. Wait. Oh, Ben, you haven't got your check, right?
It probably was direct deposit, so I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping I got it. You got yours. My daughter's got theirs. Wait, hey, what am I, chopped liver?
Now, as you know, here in Chicago, snowy day. Yeah, middle of April, snowy day. What the hell? Yeah. Pat Rod weighed in because the roads, and he says, someone needs to tell Mayor Lightfoot what happened the last time a mayor did not take care of the snowy roads.
Very good. A history lesson. That would be 1979. I can't believe Pat Rod was around in 1979.
I don't think he was. Yeah, he's like my age.
Yeah, he's a millennial. 1979.
I think he just listens to this show enough to know old things about Chicago.
Well, I feel like this is nothing like 1979. I was around in 1979. I remember it very clearly. And there was so much snow. My God, you walk down the sidewalks and the parking meters, the tops of the parking meters would be at your ankles. That's how much snow there was. And Mayor Balandic at the time did a horrific job. Oh God, it was probably as bad as Donald Trump is at handling the pandemic. Although again, the stakes are a lot higher now because this is a life-threatening disease where that was. Well, there were lives threatened by being unable to get out of their house, but nothing on the scale. Anyway, I remember this one infamous moment where Mayor Balandic assured the people of Chicago that if they dug their, I remember this, they dug their cars out of the snow, and there was massive amounts of snow, and drove them to city parking lots, they could park the cars there in the parking lots, and so they would be off the streets, and they clear the streets and get some kind of mobility and accessibility going. So all these Chicagoans dutifully went out and they shoveled the snow away, and they dug out their cars and they drove them to the parking lots as designated by the city. And guess what, D? Their parking lots were not cleared of snow. These people showed up, hey! And then they went back to their old their own little space in front of their house, and somebody else had parked there. Oh God, were people mad? They didn't know what to do with their cars. They were so mad at Bland. And you know what? Having said all that, the guy still got close to 50% of the vote in the election. That's the part of the story everybody forget. Chicagoans were enraged, and they threw Balandic out. Yeah, he still got like 45% of the vote or something like that in that election. This shows you Chicagoans love their mayors, D. You know what I mean? The guy gives them the middle finger on snow removal, and forget what an abomination he made of the trains. Where really, it was like he basically was blatantly servicing the north side to the detriment of the south side. Forget that for the moment. His inability to oversee city services. And people still voted for the guy. I remember aldermen, I shouldn't mention their names because they passed on, defending him at the city council meetings. He's done a good job. You know, it was a It wasn't a man-made disaster. It was an act of nature. They're talking about the blizzard. Yeah, that's my city. I love my city, Chicago, so much. Right. He's done a good job.
More comments on the live stream chat. By the way, Ben, when you talk about someone giving the middle finger, you don't have to give me the middle finger when you do it. Guys, you can't see it on camera. He gave me the middle finger. Flip the bird at me.
I did not.
All right, moving on here.
Moving on up.
KMA Barry, he's got jokes. He says, we don't need the roads clear because Lori Lightfoot ordered the snow and ice to stay at home.
That's good. Stay at home and don't get a haircut.
Don't get a haircut. Good call there from Ben. Let's see here. Oh, we got some Scott Skiles talk going on here in the Ben Joravsky Show live stream chat. KMA Barry also says Scott Skiles was the Rahm Emanuel of basketball coaches.
He was a sourpuss. He was, and he was short too. He had a lot in common with him. By the way, we talked about Chicago Magazine yesterday. With the, what was it, 50 most powerful women?
In Chicago.
Yeah, I had a lot of issues with that.
Yes, we did.
No
Spondeles.
Yeah.
No.
SDG should have been
no
second.
No Candace Castillo.
No, I know. Oh, my God.
No JT20, Jeanette Taylor.
Oh, come on. And Loreen, who'll be on X-Cast.
No Loreen Targos.
Come on.
She'll be on next year, though. I got a feeling. I'm calling her right now. Loreen Targos will be at next year's.
Yeah.
If Chicago Magazine is a magazine next year, who knows?
She is a badass. Loreen Targos on several fronts. But yeah, I had a lot of issues with that list. But the one that, there was an article, I saw it when I was looking at the list, they were giving grades to Rahm. I didn't have a chance to really take the deep dive on it, but Rahm's post-mayoral grades, I'm like, he got like an A or something, and a B and a C. You know, like,
I remember what you said about the list when you looked at it. You called it BS. I remember that.
Like, are you kidding me?
Man,
this guy's the worst post-mayor ever. I mean, Mayor Daley had, at least he had the courtesy, the dignity just to leave. The city was... So Rahm, but Rahm is like acting as though everything he did in Chicago was a model for other cities. Message to Rahm. The city of Chicago basically asked you to leave, and you were smart enough to read the writing on the wall, and you left. But here's the truth: it's those reporters, man. You want Rahm to call you back? Got to say nice things about him, right, D?
That's why he never called you back.
Oh, damn, man.
He's
I got to do the redo of my whole career.
All right, we'll do a few more comments here. Ro, hey, what's going on, Ro?
Ro.
Ro weighs in and says, Ben is absolutely right. Obama went way to the center, and the voters abandoned the Democrats as a result. He made so many promises, and we walked them way back.
Ro, I'm with you 100%. And I say this, kind of loving Obama. I realize I'm conflicted here. I hear him talking, and I'm like, oh, that's my guy. And like, if he called me up, I would play basketball with him, just like Bernie. But when I look at the history of what went down over the last 12 years, and that whole notion that Obama preached, that he used to put himself in a position where he could be elected president, that we are red state, we're not a red state, we're not a blue state, we're the United States, which sounds nice, but in reality is not practiced at all by the Republicans. That has really hurt not just the Democratic Party, but the country. That's why Obamacare right now is hanging on by its fingernails. Donald Trump is in court right now, has his lawyers in court to destroy Obamacare just because it has Obama's name on it, just because it's part of Obama's legacy. And that's this notion that the Republicans will do the right thing if you're just nice to them is part of that legacy. And I think that's steering us in the wrong direction. I think that the Democrats should stand up for the values that they believe in and not back off and make the Republicans come to them for once. So I'm with you 100%, Ro. And I look at Wisconsin. Obama should have stood with those unions in Wisconsin back in 2011. I was very disappointed when he did that, when he just pretended as though he had nothing to do with it. It's like, well, this fight. On one hand, you got the lefties, and the other hand, you got the conservatives. That game that people play. Like, they don't have a really stake in the game. They're kind of in the middle.
Hey, everybody, don't miss our live broadcast from the Obama Center when it opens up. Trust us, we're going to be there a lot doing the broadcast.
Yeah,
they're going to book us so fast.
We're not getting any calls from Obama anytime soon. Oh, Ben, would like to play basketball with me? Yeah, sure. You see my set shot?
All right, and let's see here. Jim, our friend Jim, made a great comment here, and I was going to ask you about it, Ben. Mm-hmm. I just got to find it live on the program here. Okay. Wait, hold on. Here we go. Jim says the Pritzkers can buy and sell Trump in a heartbeat. What do you think about that?
Well, we don't know for certain because Trump won't release his tax statements. So we don't know for certain. If I were a betting man, I would say yes, that's the case. You know, that's the big debate we've had on the show down through the years, is Donald Trump withholding his tax statements because, as Monroe Anderson says, he's concealing bad deals with nefarious agents of Putin. That's Monroe's theory. Or is he withholding them because he's embarrassed at how little money he actually has, which is another theory out there. I'm not quite sure where I fall in this. Maybe it's a combination of both. But my guess is that you're correct. Pritzker has more money than Trump.
Yeah, I'm with you. Pritzker's way richer than Trump.
I don't know about way.
I know about way.
I don't know about way. I don't know about way. I don't know about way. Maybe a little more, but I don't know about way.
Oh, hey, and our good friend Antonio. He was on the live stream chat. Antonio works at the station that fired you,
Wait.
Ben.
My Antonio?
Okay, he's not yours. That was weird. So, my Antonio? Yeah, Antonio from WCPT 820, the station that fired you.
Oh, wait, the station that say, hey, Ben, come here. Beat it. That station?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're out at Antonio. I'm sure he appreciates that.
KMA Barry waited after, I guess he recognized Antonio and put, WCU Later's finest in the house.
WCU Later. Yeah, man, that's what it was. See you later, Ben.
Good times.
Yeah, stop talking about those tiffs.
All right, everybody. So that's that. We're going to be talking to Loreen Targos in just moments. We mentioned Monroe Anderson. We're going to talk with Monroe after today's live stream. We're going to record it, and then we're going to post it on both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Make sure to check that out. Our midweek with Monroe. He was gone last week, so he's Atiba filled in for him last week. Monroe's back this week. We're going to be talking with him. We'll try and get that up at about 8 o'clock tonight, so be on the lookout for that. But hey, don't go anywhere. When we come back, Loreen Targos is going to join us. We're going to be talking this lady can talk about everything, all right? Local, national, Uber city politics. So much coming up with Loreen Targos. Don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from Ben's house. Hey, we're back. Loreen Targos, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh, yeah. You sound great. All right. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from Ben's attic.
Loreen Targos is with me. I can't see you yet on the Facebook Messenger phone, Loreen, but I can hear you, and that's what really matters. Welcome to our show, Loreen.
Thank you. Should I try to get on the video?
Nah, it's fine. We can riff.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
All
All right. Now, Loreen Targos, a frequent guest on this show, and she wears several hats, to quote Dennis, and so I'm just going to lay them out, Loreen, before we take the deep dive on all the issues of the day. Number one, she's a scientist, works for the EPA.
That's correct.
And so we could talk about federal issues, environmental issues, etc., with her. And number two, she's a political activist.
That's correct.
Of the Bernie Bernie Krat persuasion, a Bernie supporter. So we can talk to her about Bernie stepping out of the race and embracing Joe Biden and whether she's going to follow suit. And number 3, she is married to Alderman Byron Sixto Lopez, alderman of the 25th Ward, which adjoins the 22nd Ward, where the city, in its infinite wisdom, decided it was a good idea to tear down a smokestack in the middle of a pandemic. So we could talk about the whole issue of alderman prerogative and why the city does what it does. So a lot of ground to cover with Loreen. Did I pretty much get everything, Loreen?
You did.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, and let's do the disclaimer we always do when you come on the show to protect you from being bullied by unseen, powerful people at the EPA. You're the news. How do we say this? The views and opinions of Loreen or Loreen's only do not reflect the EPA or the federal government or Donald Trump. So leave her alone. Is that good enough as a?
Yep. I'm just a union member chatting with Ben.
Okay, that's. She's a union member chatting with Ben, and she has First Amendment rights. And I know all you Republicans out there will protect her First Amendment rights if Donald Trump comes after her because he doesn't like what she has to say. All right, Loreen, let's start with the thing that's on my mind, the local news. We've been talking so much national news and pandemic news, and Donald Trump is out of his mind, insane news. But let's just talk about. It's almost like. As destructive it is to people on the Southwest side, it's almost a sense of normalcy. The city of Chicago, in its infinite wisdom, decided to issue a demolition permit to a company that wanted to destroy a smokestack in the middle of a pandemic. If I read this in a book, Loreen, I wouldn't believe it. It's almost too bizarre for the city of Chicago. Why don't you just give people a little more information of where the plant is, where the smokestack is, and how everything went down?
Right. So I don't know the exact address of the plant, but it's somewhere off of I-55 in the Pulaski area. Mm-hmm. And it's about 4 miles southwest of where I live in Pilsen. And I saw an article in Block Club on Friday saying, that El Vejo, which is a Little Village environmental justice organization, was asking that this demolition not happen during the pandemic, obviously. And then, of course, I didn't wake up at 8 a.m. on Saturday, but, as soon as I got on social media, I saw people posting how terrible it was. And, the photographer had been out there capturing what turned out to be one of the greatest historical environmental disasters in this country. I think, future public health students will learn of this nationally. And since then, there's been a fallout, a lot of finger pointing, who did what, who's responsible for what, and we're going to get a lot of answers in the days to come.
Oh, in terms of the damage, what kind of...
Okay. In terms of the damage?
Yeah, in terms of the damage, what kinds of damage are we talking about? In terms of smoke and ashes, et cetera, and so forth.
Right. So, of course, people are afraid and there's anxiety and impacts to mental health, but, this was an environmental disaster. So we saw a 100-year-old smokestack that used to blow out coal ash for the last 100 years, coal smoke or whatever, fall down. And, from my understanding, asbestos may have been lining that whole tower. The city says it was removed, but we haven't seen any documents showing that it was removed. We haven't seen any lab reports or any, nothing's been publicized showing that they had verification that asbestos was removed. Lead, arsenic, all the things that are byproducts of coal incineration, all those things could be up in there. And really, we're living in an age where people don't really trust their government to protect them from this type of thing. The pandemic has only deepened the distrust of the government to protect us from disasters. So for this to happen during that pandemic is just all the more breathtaking. And of course, people don't trust what was in there. So we already know that, soil in Chicago and dust in Chicago already has a background level of, unacceptable levels of lead and that type of thing. And I think we're in the coming days, we're hopefully going to see test results of what was in the air and what was in the dust that landed in everybody's homes. I know an instance when I was in graduate school, I worked a lot on lead poisoning, and there was a case where, someone even demolished the house next door, and the family in the next house didn't think anything of it. Their windows had been open, but had gotten very dusty in their house. And one of them happened to get a blood test, and it came back that they had been lead poisoned just from the house next door demolishing. So the whole family had gotten lead poisoned just from inhaling the dust that had gotten into their home. And so we're still, who knows what might have happened with these people downwind of this, especially in the immediate area, how high their exposure was and to what they were exposed.
The mayor and the mayor's aides have been saying in the aftermath that the company did not follow the procedures that they had that they were supposed to follow in terms of using water to minimize the amount of ash that came into the air. And my immediate reaction to that is, even if they were following the guidelines, I don't understand why this permit would have been issued, this demolition would have been allowed in the middle of this current health crisis. You talk about mixed.
Exactly.
That's the part that baffles me.
Yeah, I agree. There's no safe level of exposure to whatever chemicals are in there, and we still haven't seen what we've been exposed to. And so what you'll see is, even if they had, a Noah's Ark amount of water ready to spray that down, some dust may still have escaped.
Yeah.
And given this company's record of, workers dying all the time here in Chicago, they had a worker die on December 30th, 2019. And they've had workers get injured in other states working with the same subcontractor. So it's very frustrating to see them say like, oh, well, they had a permit. Well, there still would have been, it was still very likely that the way they were demolishing, that dust was going to escape off site. And then, of course, we saw the catastrophic amount of dust that was taken off site.
And then the other issue, of course, is the one that I talked a little bit about already in the show, and that gets into the notion of aldermanic prerogative. And Loreen, you've heard me on this subject many times, or maybe not. I've talked about this many times, but talk about the ability of a local alderman, in this case, Michael Rodriguez, to use his authority to block such a demolition. Does that no longer exist in the city of Chicago?
I'm always in the mindset that people are very powerful no matter what space in society they occupy. So I think Alderman Rodriguez definitely has the power to chain himself to a bulldozer and, take whatever crazy steps he wants to take. But, within, the normal realm of what the power is for, Alderman Hopkins of the 2nd Ward gave a report to France Spielman in the Sun-Times yesterday, talking about how he had been very involved in a lot of environmental demolitions that happened in his industrial corridor in his first term as alderman in the past 4 years. And he talked about how he was consulted in a very in-depth way. And it's a way that I haven't heard Alderman Rodriguez say that he was consulted and involved.
The first point you made is an interesting one. If an alderman or any citizen really wants to stop a project, you got to chain yourself to a tree, or you have to chain yourself to the smokestack itself so that they can't demolish it. It's almost like dealing with Donald Trump. It's such an...
And you don't have to go that far, but even if people can raise a stink. But there's an instance here in the 25th Ward where a concrete plant is going forward. They're issuing new permits to allow a concrete plant to operate here. Nobody wants it. It's going to add to the cumulative burden of what we breathe here in Pilsen and in Bridgeport, because it's on the border of Pilsen and Bridgeport. And we haven't been able to stop it, even though our alderman opposes it and the community opposes it. They continue to receive permits from the city of Chicago. So in that case, what can we chain ourselves to,
Yeah. I'd like to point out that Loreen's husband, Byron Sixto Lopez, was the alderman I like this is one of my favorite little themes about alderman and prerogative was the alderman-elect at that last city council meeting. He had not been seated. He was the alderman-elect when the city of Chicago, Mayor Rahm, the city council approved TIF funding for the 78. And he wasn't chained to a smokestack, Loreen, but he was protesting in the streets of Chicago, doing a sit-in. And they still voted for the TIF he was opposed to. So alderman and prerogative has never existed in the city of Chicago, in my humble opinion. It's a game that, in this particular case, that the mayor is playing in order to sort of like shame the aldermen and use the aldermen as scapegoats, to thus give her and her administration more power. Do you see it the same way?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a very simplistic way of explaining why Chicago is such a scary place to try to have a democratic voice. It's a tiny fraction of, the real challenges of people trying to have a voice in their politics and in their future.
I agree with that completely. So lefties out there, if you're listening to me, and I know you are, stop talking about alderman and prerogative. It was a contrived issue to begin with, and I wish it existed. Even in back in the this Saturday in the 22nd Ward, where then maybe they wouldn't have demolished this smokestack. Maybe the bureaucrats at City Hall would have listened to the aldermen and just held back a little bit to make sure, well, you know what, just to hold back until the pandemic has passed. And then they can continue their project. I think that would have been the sensible thing to do. Don't you agree, Loreen?
Oh, yeah. They wouldn't have been, who knows what's going to happen to them now. Albejo is calling for them to pack up their bags and leave the community, and I personally support that.
All right, let's move on to national news. And, I think I talked to you briefly on the phone about this yesterday. Bernie dropped his campaign and has endorsed Biden. You've been on the show many times talking about why you supported Bernie Sanders. And are you ready to do the same, Loreen, or what do you need to hear from Biden before you jump aboard that bandwagon?
I think first I need to hear from Biden that he works for us. It's not a surprise that Bernie endorsed Joe Biden. He's been telling us from the beginning that he's going to do that. It's kind of one of the limits of electoralism is, the change that you get through the ballot box is different than change you would get in the streets. So, Bernie, I think, did his best. I will always cherish what he's given my generation, the generation younger than me, to believe that we deserve something better. And, I think it's up to Biden to show that he can earn our vote. The entitlement coming from some voters thinking that leftists should just hand over our votes to Biden is absolutely undemocratic. He won because 60 billionaires support him who hold outsized control over our politics. Obama is rumored to have moving things around behind the scenes since before South Carolina. And, Obama vacations on mega yachts. And, how are we supposed to trust that Biden works for us unless he shows that he's very eager to earn our votes and not just take them for granted?
So give me some kind of specifics that you're looking for. I know a lot of our listeners, Loreen, are in the same position you are. They want to hear something substantive from Joe Biden.
Definitely. Yeah. So, like when Bernie talks about, like, we took on the healthcare industry, we took on the fossil fuel industry, all these different industries that take away our freedom to have a life that isn't commodified. Where is Biden going to step up to? Is he going to challenge the fossil fuel industry and support a Green New Deal and help us create a climate change plan that reflects what scientists are asking for? Because scientists are saying we've got 7 years or 10 years to turn this thing around before it's irretrievable. And his plan is talking about signing up for the Paris Agreement and getting us to carbon zero by 2050. That's a climate change denier position at this point. So is he going to move on that? Is he going to talk about free college for all? Is he going to talk about Medicare for all? Medicare for all, we all understand, like, he's, indebted to this ACA, Obamacare plan, but Obamacare is a giveaway to the insurance industry. So we really need a plan. Like, he wants to lower the Medicare age to 60 when Hillary Clinton was offering lowering it to 50 or 55. He needs to lower it to 0. And, unless we stand for strong demands like that, then how are we supposed to believe that he really wants to beat Trump? Because that's been kind of the fear, is that Biden only came in to make sure Bernie didn't win. And his backers, who are billionaires, actually don't care if Biden wins. So now that Biden has gotten Bernie out of the race, is Biden going to work hard to beat Trump, or has he already completed his mission? And the billionaires are perfectly happy with a re-election of Trump. And Biden needs to show us that he actually wants to beat Trump, and he wants to beat him enough to challenge those billionaires and actually support policies that will make young people excited to vote for him, which at this point he has absolutely failed to do.
Do you think at this moment that Biden is forcefully enough opposing Trump to show that he does, in fact, want to defeat Donald Trump? Do you think he's showing enough to convince you that he's in this race, not just to take care of what you said, the agenda of billionaires, but to actually defeat Donald Trump?
I pay a lot more attention to action than I do pretty words, and all I'm hearing is pretty words. I see no substance to show that he is actually going to work as hard to win our votes as Bernie was.
One of the strangest things that I seized on, it's small in comparison to all the other issues you were talking about, college and the environment, and of course healthcare, which is such a paramount issue in our country today. So bizarre, Joe Biden's attitude about marijuana, legalizing marijuana.
Right.
That just it's small, Loreen, but it's so symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand
It is.
how the head of a Democratic Party, it's so clear that the Democratic Party has moved beyond on this issue, and he's still straggling behind.
Right, and it's so hard to understand what people's motivations are, because you can think, like, as people do sweetly, thinking like, oh, he's just stuck in his ways. But he's one of the people who supported these crime bills that criminalize being Black and being brown in America. And, why is he still supporting marijuana laws when he knows that the effect is exactly what he says he opposes, which is institutionalized racism? This is not about, oh, I'm scared of how marijuana affects your brain. This is about, how our society treats people and criminalizes people who are in poverty.
Yeah, that's the absolute paramount issue. And that's just one case where I would love for once the centrist wing of the Democratic Party to say, you know what, we did make mistakes back then. We have changed. We have evolved. You follow what I'm saying? As so much of the rhetoric during the primary, which we're supposed to forget, but so much of the rhetoric was, lefties, we can't win with what your agenda is because we have to appeal to people who vehemently disagree with it. So we haven't learned anything. You know what I'm saying? We still are not for Medicare for all. We're still not for a legalization of marijuana. It's very strange how the Democrats are still clinging to these old, outdated notions.
Yeah, and that's actually something that is an intersection with local politics and national politics that I've found myself being very interested in. So, nationally, there's still this idea that, oh, we should be bipartisan, and look, this Democrat worked with this Republican. But we're seeing a lot of cynicism coming from my generation, because we see that when a Republican and a Democrat work together, it's so that they can, put sanctions on Iran to further starve the people and hurt people or something like that. We're not seeing bipartisanship where it's different types of legislation. For example, with Byron and Alderman Hopkins, they're not very ideologically similar, but they both agree that aldermanic prerogative isn't where the corruption lies in this city, and they're challenging the mayor on that narrative and how it relates to this Hillco disaster. And it's sort of like strange bedfellows, but nobody can explain it but for the fact that they are principled. Nobody, they don't have the same campaign donor telling them to talk about that. But in national politics, you'll see, Joe Biden worked bipartisanly with this other guy to make it more expensive to get drugs because they both have the same pharma donor or something like that. And that's something that, it'd be great to see, because Biden knows how that works. let's be honest with the American people and call that out. But is he on our side? Would he be on the side of the people to actually do that, or does he work for the pharma donors?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I think centrist voters are actually scared of. I think like the resistance voters who were supporting Biden, who were supporting a more moderate candidate, have since Bernie stepped out of the race, I think they've become afraid. I think they've become afraid that Biden actually won't move towards the voters that he needs that came from the Biden campaign, or from the Bernie campaign. Will he cast off those big pharma donors and say, you know what, we're going to put a cap on pharmaceutical drugs? No American's going to pay more than $50 or $200 a month or a year for drugs. Is he bold enough to do that and piss off his pharma donors? I don't know if he's on our side that much. And his supporters, it's on them to challenge Biden, not to yell at us to vote for blue no matter who. It's on them to challenge Biden's campaign to work for the people.
Vote for blue no matter who. Forget everything you believe in. Shut up, jump aboard. Yeah, that is the standard refrain. I just want to go back to something you mentioned. You were talking about Brian Hopkins and your husband, Ciccio Lopez, Alderman Ciccio Lopez. This is an interesting distinction, going back to local politics for a moment. But Brian Hopkins represents an upscale North Side ward. And the smokestack that they destroyed is in a relatively working class, largely Hispanic Southwest Side ward. And two different attitudes in the city of Chicago about economic development in each. So when Brian Hopkins talks from the North Side upscale ward about how the city worked in conjunction with him on these plants, et cetera, and so forth, I think it was largely because he comes from a well-to-do North Side ward, that there was so much working with him on that. The city's attitude, and this goes back long before Lori Lightfoot, is relative indifference bordering on passive-aggressive hostility toward people in poor wards. Back in the 1990s, this is long before you were on the scene, Loreen, but the city of Chicago allowed an operative for the federal government to put huge mounds of waste on the middle of the west side on a vacant lot on the west side. It was part of a sting operation where he was dumping waste there and debris there in order to capture the local politicians and taking bribes. The federal government knew what was going on. The city of Chicago knew what was going on, and nobody did anything. So that attitude that the city works well with residents through the aldermen, that's class-based in the city of Chicago. I just had
I mean, we see here, like in the 25th ward, this ward had like Byron will always say, this ward had no alderman for 23 years. And in a lot of the cases, I know it's maybe an inflammatory thing to say, but in many of the cases where we're, talking to people saying, what did the previous alderman do when he'd be in this room? He was never holding whatever powerful figure accountable for what they would do for this community. And everything was a giveaway. And so, there's instances, there was in 2016, one of the first protests that Byron had organized when he was director of the Pilsen Alliance was around this luxury housing development in Pilsen. And they had, I think, developed 100 units of luxury housing, and very little became affordable housing, below the minimum for the city of Chicago. So there was an in-kind fee of like a plot of land that was supposed to go to the high school. And then when Byron became alderman in 2019, his superintendent was like, oh, there's this lot, it's full of debris and trash. And they found out that it still belonged to the developer who had promised in newspapers in 2016 that it was going to be turned over to the school. And it hadn't been. So it's little things like that like, every day we're like learning about things like that, where, the previous alderman was not working for the people here. He was working for not the people here. And so, when the community needs to be empowered, and that's why we talk about, fighting for these things like getting our schools fully funded, getting a living wage. Because if the people in this community, who the working class community, if they could be paid $15 an hour no matter what their job is and have the right to a union, then they wouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs. They could just have one job, be home with their kids at night, be involved with their school's PTA, pay attention to what their alderman's doing instead of being so busy trying to survive that they can't pay attention and be civically engaged in their
Loreen, before I let you go, I want to come back to federal issues, come back to how Donald Trump is responding to the pandemic. I think I mentioned this to you yesterday. When I watch the way Trump treats some of the federal employees, Dr. Fauci pops to my mind, number one. I reminded me of how he and his aides treat EPA workers. You're like political creatures. You're supposed to just bow to whatever dictates he utters from one day to the next. It must remind you the same when you watch these press conferences and these briefings.
Yeah, there's a similar lack of respect for, federal servants who are doing their jobs. Just no sense of a partnership or that we're in this together. It's always an adversarial relationship and not supportive of each other. We need to be having each other's backs in this. That's the only way that we survive this pandemic, is by supporting each other and listening to what everybody's good at and supporting each other and finding ways that we can help each other as they're helping you. And we're not seeing that from the highest office in this country. And we've never seen it at the federal level with how he deals with federal civil servants. And now we're seeing it on this most important stage we've ever seen in his presidency.
By the way, what was the response you had to me yesterday when I got you on the phone? It was a funny bit, and I can't remember it at the moment. I said there are 3 kinds of Bernie-crats.
Right.
One who like me, who hold his nose and vote blue no matter what state he's in. The other one will hold his nose and vote blue, only if he lives in a swing state. And then the third one is, of course, the one who will just not vote blue no matter what, and barely so left that they barely voted for Bernie in the first place. You said there was a 4th kind. What was that kind that you said? What was that line you used?
I think the 4th kind needs a new category where, we're just going to fight to sort of, in the end, it comes out as like pushing Joe Biden left, which sounds very innocuous and totally democratic. But in this more anarchist way, it's saying, I'm never going to vote for Biden. He stands for nothing. He only works for the billionaires. And it's kind of up to him to make sure that that's not true. Show us that it's ridiculous that he would work for billionaires. Just like, if your spouse was accusing you of, you don't love me, you don't think I'm beautiful, then you must step up and love the hell out of your spouse so that they cannot deny that they are beloved and wanted by you. So I would like Biden to woo me.
All right. There you go. We'll leave with that. You hear that, Joe Biden? Prove it. Prove yourself worthy of Loreen's vote. Loreen, thank you so much for taking the time and talk to us. I appreciate it as always. All right?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, very good. That's great. Loreen Targos from the 25th Ward, and she wears many hats. She's a federal employee, EPA scientist. She's a political activist, big-time Bernie-crat, and her husband's the alderman of the 25th Ward, so she knows a little bit of how politics play in the city of Chicago. Yeah, alderman a prerogative. It was made up from the get-go. Lori Lightfoot very successfully used that as an issue to convince people to vote like it was a reform issue. Totally fictitious, doesn't exist, has never existed. And as we see, it's not really a good idea to lock the aldermen out, as we saw here on the southwest side of Chicago when they destroyed a smokestack in the middle of a pandemic. All right, that was Loreen Targos.
Oh, my God, Ben. Breaking news here. I know you were wondering about this. Chicago magicians. What are they going to do in these times? Well, they've adjusted to virtual. They're going virtual here, adjusting to virtual magic amid coronavirus pandemic.
I'm reassured to see that. Virtual magic. How does that work?
Well, let's find out. Oh, this is written by our good friend Evan Moore.
Oh, it's from the Sun-Times?
Shout out to the Chicago Sun-Times and Evan Moore. The gig economy, or as Trump calls it, the gig economy. The gig economy. When he said that, millions in the gig economy. Good Lord. The gig economy has all but crushed any major means by which its workers can make a living amid the coronavirus pandemic. For some entertainers, even the magic is gone, at least in the traditional sense. This is good, Evan. That's why some Chicago magicians are keeping the art form alive in new ways. So magic's going to be virtually online.
I'm glad to hear that. Magic virtually online. That's reassuring to know. Magic is not disappearing from the city of Chicago. All right, very good. I want to thank Loreen Targos. And we got Monroe Anderson. We're going to bring him on. We're going to Dennis is going to upload this show, and then we're going to interview Monroe, and that'll be ready to go. What, about 8 o'clock tonight, 9 o'clock tonight, Dave?
8 o'clock tonight. I'm going to drop Monroe Anderson. So for those looking for that midweek with Monroe, don't worry. It's going to be downloadable. Subscribe. Go find it. And also, too, shout out to our good friend Pat Whalen. He helps us out on social media. He is the man. He posts the links to our show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Tell your friends they can find our show easily if you want to spread the word.
All right, Pat Whalen is the man.
We got to get him on the show to talk.
Yeah, we haven't done a virtual Pat Whalen.
I know, we need a virtual Pat Whalen.
Virtual Pat Whalen.
Is he a magician?
What he does with social media is magic, so I guess he's a magician. Anyway, want to thank Dr. D, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois, without whom this show would not be possible. And as you know, for everybody back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
All right, I see a sign language guy on my computer screen. Oh, and right next to him is Governor Jb Pritzker. He's giving his daily COVID-19 press briefing. Go check it out. And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, give the live stream a try sometime. Tuesdays through Fridays. 1 until, sometimes 3, sometimes 2:45. Right now, 2:38. We're in the attic, all right? Different times. Go check out the live stream and join us. We'd love to have you. And join the live stream chat. Weigh in, and if you watch your language, we'll read your comment. We'll see you tomorrow.
Apologies to all the Aries. But if you stay at home now, maybe you can celebrate with the Geminis later.